Hello everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Shadrach and today we are going to talk about a quick way to set up a REST API for your front-end application using Json-Server. Now, in modern web application, when you want to create and test an application, you often requires a reliable backend to handle the API request and also to manage their data. Now, when you decide to set up a full-fledged server and database, it can be time-consuming and very complex, especially during the early stages of the development, or maybe when you're working on a smaller project or a spike project, that is a project for demonstration purposes. So that is the reason why we are going to talk about Json-Server. I have come across Json-Server and I've used it a couple of times. It is a Node.js package and I like how powerful and lightweight it is. It is a tool that allows developers to set up a full fake REST API with zero coding in less than 30 seconds. That is what they say in their documentation, and it is true. I am going to basically show you why it is true. Now, this package can actually transform a simple JSON file into a robust, ready-to-use API, making it an invaluable asset for front-end developers. So when you are someone who is trying to prototype, or like you are creating a prototype, it's going to be very useful for you. So I'm going to say it's basically useful for anyone looking to quickly mock a backend functionality to test a front-end application or test a feature. My experience personally as a front-end developer is that I often need to test my applications against a backend API. Right? So Json-Server will provide a straightforward solution by allowing users or allowing anyone developing to create a mock backend that can handle any typical CRUD operation like create, read, update, and delete operations. So it basically helps in simulating real-world scenarios, and it ensures that your front end behaves as expected as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to dive into getting started with Json-Server. The video is going to be two parts. We are going to talk about Json-Server. We are going to try a lot of examples, like all the different scenarios, and then right after that we would implement it in a real-world project, right, in a front-end project, and then see how it actually works in an actual project basically. So we have a lot to cover. Let's actually get started installing. As you can see here, I have opened the package Json-Server, and you can install it using npm or yarn, and this one is installing it locally into any project, but then if you want to install it globally as well, you can also install it using the -g flag. I'm going to create a new project here. Yeah, I mean, I've already created a project, so I'm going to open it in VS Code. So you can see VS Code here, but you can see it is an empty project. There is nothing, there is no files here, because we are going to test Json-Server separately. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create a package.json file, and I am going to add scripts like this, and dependencies as well. Alright, I am going to install Json-Server. So I would open my terminal here, and I am going to do npm install Json-Server. I think right now they have version 1 in beta mode, so I'm going to install a specific version, right? So if you want to follow along and you want to make sure everything is working like you see from mine, you have to install this particular version, right? So it's version 0.17.0. Right, so that's the version I am installing here. So make sure to install the same version so that you have it working exactly like mine. And we are going to go back to documentation after you install it. The next thing is to add db.json file. Right, so let's copy the content. Let's go back here. We're going to create another file called db.json, and we are going to paste that content inside here. So you can see this db.json file contains post and then comments, and then this one file called profile. Right, so after that, we can just do npx Json-Server db.json. We just have to basically run it. That's what it is saying. I'm going to add a start script. So let's go back, go to package.json. Inside here, I'm going to add this. So as you can see, Json-Server -- watch. Then we have db.json. Right, perfect. So that I can basically do npm run start, or I can just do npm start, and there you go. We have Json-Server running, right, on localhost port 3000, and then we have post, comments, and profile endpoints. So that is the reason why they were saying that you can get started within 30 seconds. Right, it does not require you to have any other setup again. Just by adding, just by installing Json-Server, by adding db.json and then running the server using this script, you have some endpoints. So we have the post endpoints, comments endpoint, and then profile. Now I'm going to use Postman. Alright, so you can see I have Postman here. I'm going to use Postman to test and see the data we get from these endpoints. So yeah, I have it set up here, so I'm just going to run it, right? So you can see localhost 3000 and then /post. That's the endpoint we are getting. So when I send it, let's see the response we get, and there you go. So we get ID, title, views. Like, these are the posts we have in db.json. So let's go to db.json and then let's look at it. So that's the title of our post. And then we have the views, we have the ID. Alright, that is exactly what we are getting in Postman. Now we can also do comments by going to /comments. So here, as you can see, localhost 3000 and /comments. So we send that and we get the comments. Alright, so very, very cool. Like, just like that, we have REST API endpoints, which gives us post, comments, and then we can also do profile. Right. But as you can see, these are the endpoints, these are the resources, and when you hit them, you get posts, comments based on the endpoints you hit. So this basically means that if you add some key and then the objects here, you get it as an endpoint as well. So that's basically how Json-Server works, by adding that in db.json. So we see how easy it is to get started with like a server, like a backend server. So we can replace this with our own data. Now let's say we want to get just one data. Alright, so maybe we just want to get one post, even though we don't see it as part of the endpoints, but it also gives that to us automatically. So let's go to Postman again. So let's go to posts. So here we can just do /1, and this one is the ID of the post. Right, so you can see from here we have IDs. So we do /1, which means we are getting this post. So when we click send, we are going to get our post. Right, so the same thing for comments. If we do comments and then we do let's say 2, we get the second comment. Very, very cool. Alright, so as you can see, up until this point we are only doing a get, right? But then one thing I said was that you could also perform all the CRUD operations on it, right? So for example, we want to add a post to the list of posts we have, and one thing you're going to see is that I mean, let's actually test it before so that you see it for yourself. So let me go back to VS Code again. Let me actually make this a bit bigger. Alright, so as you can see, we have 2 posts. Then we have 2 comments. So if we go back to Postman, here we want to create a post. So as you can see, the method here is post, not get. And inside the body we are adding a title, that is a title of the post we need. And what again do we need? We also need the views, right? So let's actually say views instead of alter. So views is supposed to be a number, so let's just say 200. Right, and I am going to send this. Right, so let me click on send, and as you can see, we have 201 created. And let's go back to our file and see our db.json, and here you have the file updated with the new post. Very cool. So it basically means that when you perform a mutation with Json-Server, it basically updates the file. So you have like an actual database somewhere, and then you get the update. So if you are running a front-end application, you create a post, you still get a post. It does not lose it when you refresh the page or something. And yeah, basically you have it updated here. And you can see, even though we didn't add an ID when we were creating, we didn't add an ID as part of the post body, but then you have the ID generated for you automatically. You can see some random string here. So that is how Json-Server works. You can basically create a post. You can also update a post. So let's try that one. So here we can also post the comments. So let's see comments. We have the text, and then we have the post ID of the comment. So let's actually try and then create one comment. So we have the text, not text, and then we have the post ID. So let's actually use 1 as the post ID. So this comment is for the first post, as post 1, and I am going to hit send, and there you go, we have an ID generated as well. So we go to comment, and we see that the comments list has been updated as well. So let's try some example for the update and delete as well. So we have put. So the put is for updating. So let's try that. Okay, so here the method is put, and with the put, it means we are updating the whole object. So you can see we are updating the first post with the ID 1, with the title, and then let's actually update the views as well, because the other property is views. And let's say 300. Right, so we have it like this. This is the first post, right? So we have it a title, and then the views is 100. Now we are going to update it, right? To update a title, and then the views, we're going to move it up to 300. So let's actually click send, and we get 200. Okay, so let's go back and see, and as you can see, we have the updated object. Nice. Let's also try one for the deletes. So let's go to delete, and let's see. So we do posts, right? But then the method is delete, and then we pass the ID of the post we want to delete, basically. So let's see. Let's actually delete the last one we added here. So let me pass the ID for that. That's the ID, and I am going to hit send. We get 200. Okay, and it's gone. We are back to 2 posts. Nice. So as you can see, you can perform all the CRUD operations using Json-Server. Alright. So let me just recap everything we've talked about so far. Alright. So we installed Json-Server, and this is the version of Json-Server we installed. And when we installed it, the only thing we did was we added db.json file, and db.json file is going to contain some keys and the list of items, assumingly your data in your database. Right, so this is basically what Json-Server is automatically going to use to generate the endpoints for you, so from this db.json file, without any extra work. Right, so we used Postman to test it, and we saw that we can perform all the CRUD operations using get, post, put, delete. So that is very cool. You would notice that these endpoints that we have is what Json-Server gives you. So we have post, we have comments, we have profile. It is going to happen that most of the time this is not how your endpoint patterns are. So for example, sometimes you are going to have something like /API/ and then maybe if it is post, you're going to have /API/post /API/comment /API/profile, right? So you could have a different endpoints pattern as well depending on your project. So how does Json-Server allows you to flexibly customize these endpoints to whatever you want? So that is what we are going to talk about next. We are going to use something we called custom routes, because Json-Server automatically creates these endpoints for you based on the structure of your DB. Might not be the pattern your project actually uses. To maintain consistency and flexibility, Json-Server allows you to define custom routes, right? So with custom routes, you can basically map your desired endpoint patterns to the data in your db.json. So you can have the data in db.json as required, just like we have here, but we can basically map the endpoints to like the pattern of our endpoints, like our project endpoint, to match the data in db.json. Let me show you what I am talking about. Now, to implement custom routes, we are going to have to create another file, and we're going to call it routes.json. For example, let's say that I have my route pattern is something like this. I have /API for all my endpoints. It starts with /API. Alright, so /API, and then maybe I have posts. Alright, so this is how my endpoint looks like. Now I can say that, okay, so whenever you see this, then match it to /post. Alright, as simple as this. So match API/post to post. And I can do the same thing for comments, right? So if I see API/comments like this, match it to comments. Alright, let's get rid of this extra comma. We need to also make sure that Json-Server knows about this routes.json. And the way we are going to do that is we would go here, and I'm going to add another script here because I don't want to remove this script. I can basically modify this one and add it, but and yeah, this is the command, right? So it's still using the same Json-Server --watch db.json. Now the extra option I have included is the --routes, right? And that is pointing to routes.json. So I am going to start that one instead. So I'm not going to do npm start run start. I'm going to do start custom, just to keep this script here as well. And actually, let me save it, and let me start again. Alright, so it's running again. Alright, so now let's go to postman. Now you can do /API/post, and then it's going to give you the data, and you'd realize that inside our console it is going to say /post. Alright, that's because we said when it sees API/post, it should map to post. So it is just as if you are hitting /post, but then in your endpoint it is actually hitting API/post, right? This basically means you can match any style of endpoint pattern or URL pattern, right? You can map it to whatever structure you have in your db.json file, and it's going to basically work. And yeah, there is one more that I want to show you, so let me show you this as well. So for example, I can have something like this, right? So maybe there is blog, there is resource, and there is ID, and there is show. What this means is that now this is the resource, right? So resource is basically either post or comment. So whenever it sees resource, it is going to replace it with post or comments. When it sees ID, it is going to replace it with the ID of the post. Right, so this basically means that you can have a URL endpoint like this. Right, so just to make it clear to you, let me copy this, and then after here I can paste this here. So let's say that my endpoint is like this, right? So /blog, and then here I want posts, and then the ID of the post, and then show, right? And what this is mapping to is resource ID. So this is basically going to be post, and then the ID of the post. So we hit it. Did we save it? No, we didn't. So let's save it. Let's go back, hit it again, and let's we get one post, right? Exactly. So when you look at it, this is how it looks like. It's gonna say post and then /1. That is the first post, right? And it is very similar to the ones I showed you here. Yes, just like this one. Alright, so let me explain this a bit more. Now, the custom routes mapping in routes.json that we just did here, right? They are technically called route rewriters in Json-Server, right? And as I said, they help you map custom URLs to the ones generated by Json-Server. Now, one common pattern you are going to see people use, or you're going to see even in the examples on the documentation, something like this, right? So you're going to see something like a star here, right? And then there is going to be like $1 here. Now this is one common pattern you're going to see. Let me remove this so that I can explain to you properly. This is a wildcard, right? And this is basically what we want to replace whatever we get here, right? So any URL starting with /API/ the wildcard is going to capture the rest of the URL following the /API/, right? And then the $1 is going to define how the matched URL should be written, right? It should be rewritten. So the $1 here refers to the captured part of the URL matched by the wildcard here. Right. And what I mean by that is, if I save it, as you can see, that is the changes here, right? We have the API/*, and then it should be replaced with this, right? And you'd see that we are going to have exactly the same results if I open posts. Alright, so let's actually do this one. So API /post like this. Alright, and you can see that we still get all the posts, and we can also do comments like this, and we still get all the comments. Alright, so this one basically captures all URLs after /API, so we don't need to do separate ones for post and then comment. That's why I removed the comment one, and you still saw that even if you do /API/post, it works. /API/comment, it still works, right? Yeah, so when we do /API/post, it means that the star here is going to capture the post, and then it is going to be replaced here, right? So it's going to be /post, right? That's basically what it means. What I want to talk about is I want to talk about a question you might be asking yourself, right? So for example, this db.json file now contains posts, comments, and then we have profile here. So I'm sure you might be asking, and it's the same question I asked myself, that what if this file gets really huge? At the moment it's just 2 posts and 3 comments, 1 profile. So what if we have like a very large kind of data? It's going to be very huge of a file, right? So if we have like hundreds of posts, hundreds of comments, and this file is going to be very difficult to read. And most of the time, because of how you want to organize your code properly or in a nice way, you want to have like separate file to store posts, just like you'd have a separate table in your database to store posts, a separate table in your database to store comments, and a separate table to store profile. You want to maybe have the same pattern here, even though it does not really matter. Like you can have it in a file. After all, it's just a JSON file. But if you want to have like you organize your files in that manner, maybe you have a folder and then you have posts. So like if you have a lot of tables and you want to have a different file for each of these tables, for example, post, comments, profile. So you might be asking yourself, is it possible to have like separate DB files? Yes, the answer is yes, it is possible. All right, and I am going to show you. If it is possible, then looking at the fact that like during mutation, that is when you create a post, when you create a comment, or like you update or delete, it updates the file. How is it going to work in that way? Like if you have separate files, how does mutation works, right? And how does Json-Server get to know which file it should update? So that is example we are going to try next. So we are going to try and then create separate files for our posts, our comments, our profile. We are going to focus on only the post and comments because we are not using a profile. So you can have as many files as you want. In our case, we are going to create only 2 files just to keep it simple. And then you can combine them at runtime with Json-Server scripts. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call it posts.json. I'm going to create another one called comments.json. I'm just adding it here. Just adding it inside this file just to keep things simple, but you can have a different structure for yours. You can create a folder like db and then put your post and then your comments or whatever table you want to have your db inside that, right? But I'll just keep it here for simplicity. Now I have post.json, so I'm going to copy the post side of things. So copy this one, go here, alright, and then I'll paste that here. So this is going to be the file to store only posts, and let me copy the comments as well, right? And then this will be the table for my comments. Alright, let me save it and then let me close this one as well. What we are going to do next is we are going to create a server.js file. Alright, so this is where we define how our server should run. I'm going to copy a bunch of code in here, and I'm going to explain every single line of the code to you. Alright, so here as you can see, I've added server.js file here, and this is a content I've added. As you can see, it looks a lot, about 58 lines of code, but it's actually not that complex. It's very simple. So let me take you through every single line and then show you what is happening here, right? Alright, so we're basically writing some few Node.js, and here as you can see, I am importing the Json-Server module, right? Here I am importing the file system module to read and write files as well, and I am also importing the path module to handle and transform file paths, right? So these are Node.js modules. This is from Json-Server. But when you come here, this is where I am creating an instance of the Json-Server. Right, so this is how you create an instance of Json-Server by doing Json-Server.create, and you can see. And here you can see I have middlewares, right? And I did Json-Server dot default. So this is basically saying that I want to use the default middlewares from Json-Server. So by default, because we don't see it, Json-Server uses some middlewares behind the scenes, like calls, middlewares for caching and for logging and stuff like that. So this is going to say that we want to maintain the default middlewares that Json-Server uses, and then we can add our own middlewares later. On this line here, I am basically saying that read and pass the post.json file. So this one, so as you can see, I am using the file system module, and I say read file async, and I give it a path by using the path module as well. Alright, and I'm saying it should read the post.json file. So this is going to read and pass the post.json file, the data in post.json file. I'm going to get it here as an object. Alright, and it is doing the same thing here as well. So we are reading the content of comments.json, and here I combine them as one object. So it's going to be post and then comments at the end of the day, just like we had in db.json. So this is where we combine them. And here, where we do const router, we do Json-Server.router. We want to create the router using the combined data, that is the DB. So all these are done for us behind the scenes when we were doing, when we had this file and then we were just running with the default JSON command. All these setup was done behind the scenes for us already. Now we are implementing a custom server.js file. We want to run Json-Server with our own implementation, right? So here is how you create the router. Right? So you create the router and then you pass the DB. This line here, we read, and then I add a comment here saying load and apply custom routes. But then this is basically reading and passing the routes.json, right, as our custom routes. So this one, don't forget. So this is saying we want to use routes.json as our custom routes. We do server.use, right? So we use that as a middleware again by doing Json-Server.readWrite, right? So just like I mentioned, these are route read writers, right? So we read write the routes using routes, right? After that, we add the middleware to handle responses and write changes to the respective files, right? So you can see that here I have write data function which accepts the file path and then data, right? And then it do file system.write file async, right? So this is what is going to write to the file based on whether we are updating posts or comments, or whichever file we are updating. Right, and then we are doing it for post, puts, patch, and then delete. As for get, we are going to get it automatically once we do get, but we want to only write to the file when we use any of these methods. Right, and here we do db, we do route.db. This is going to get the loaddb instance. So loaddb is basically the in-memory database that Json-Server uses. If you want to learn more about loaddb, you can go to their documentation, or like you can even search for loaddb. You'd know how it works. But Json-Server uses loaddb as an in-memory database to keep track of the data, basically. Right, and here is where we are writing the data actually. So by calling write data, we write to the file based on whatever file we want to update. Now here we pass the default middleware first of all, and then we do server.use router, this one, and then we do server.listen. This is going to start the server and listen. So as I said, here you can even change the port. So for example, if like you have your front-end application running on the same port, it means you can change the port number here, right? So I can say maybe 3001. So let me change it so that you see, right? And then I'm going to say 3001. I am also going to make the code available on GitHub, so you can take a look at the source code and then try to maybe go through a few more times just for things to be clear, or you can just copy the code and then paste it in yours, and it's going to work the same way, right? So this is how you are going to combine different DBs into one and then run your own custom server script, right? So we can stop the server. Let's stop this one, and let's try and then run it again. So this time we are not going to use npm because it is Node. We are going to do Node server.js, right? And this is going to run the server.js file. So as you can see, Json-Server is running on port 3001. So let's go to Postman again. So here, let's first of all get some posts, right? And don't forget the port is now 3001. So let's hit it, and there you go. You still get it, right? You still get updated title and then updated post. So it is basically, yeah, as you can see, /post. And even though we can still do API /post, it still should work the same way because we have this, and inside our server we also have this. Yeah, we also have the right rerouters set up here. Let's go to post. Right, and here we want to add another post. So let's hit send. Actually, let's change the port before. Right, and then let's hit send. And you can see we have 201 created. And to test that was working, we have to go to post.json, and you can see we have cool list of JS libraries post added here, right? And it didn't affect comments.json. As you can see, it's still 3 here. So if we also post another comment and hit send, actually let's change the port, hit send. Now it's created. You go here and you see that we have another comment, right? As you can see. So yeah, that is basically how Json-Server works with custom server script as well. Alright, so that is everything I wanted to cover in section 1, as I mentioned, and that is how I am ending section 1. Now we are going to try and use Json-Server in an actual project, in a real project,